I think that we had in the last session, the topic was how Bahá'u'lláh looks at truth and investigation of truth and quality of a true seeker. I think that we have covered some passages, and I gave you some paragraphs that you have read, hopefully. I want to first go over some of them and then see if we are all on the same page. I read some and then we discuss it. Paragraph 214 of Kitáb-I-Íqán, it says, seeker should regard backbiting as grievous error and keep himself aloof from its dominion, inasmuch as backbiting quenches the light of the heart and extinguisheth the life of the soul. This is, Bahá'u'lláh considers these as one of the quality of a true seeker. Backbiting means simply, based on what Abdul Baha defines, is when something causes disturbance, sadness, and disunity in the hearts and the minds of people. Of course, Bahá'u'lláh upholds truthfulness and honesty. And if there is something that you need to say to a person, always the best way is to go with the spirit of friendliness and compassion, just talk to the person himself. Or if you feel that your voice should be heard, there is always, according to Bahá'u'lláh, there are channels that you can use in order to create peace and at the same time reveal the truth. Backbiting has many deficient attributes. One is that it is very interesting that Bahá'u'lláh says quenches the light of the heart. What does that really mean? Or when he says extinguisheth the life of the soul, my understanding of these passages is that when you backbite, you concentrate on the faults of others. Abdul Baha strongly suggests that when we do person-to-person relationship, we should not look at each other's faults. Rather, everybody has a quality at least that can be appreciated in any relationship. That is one reason that backbiting is harmful, because your soul and your heart will be concentrating on the negative rather than positive. This statement of Abdul Baha may shed some light that if someone has 10 bad qualities and 1 good quality, concentrate on the good and forsake the evil. That is person to person. But if you see something that should be brought to the attention of the society, then Abdul Baha and Bahá'u'lláh, they emphasize that with a purity of intention and with clarity of purpose, you can share your concerns with the institutions that govern the society, whether it is religious or civic, and then detach and then rely and trust. Your aim should not be to destroy someone, rather, individually, you should be loving, but collectively, socially, you have to seek justice through the systems that have been established. So that is very important, and for the truth seeker. Why it is important? Because if you do not have that quality, you become biased. No matter who says what, you have to take side. This is why Bahá'u'lláh even continues, and he says that you should not have hate or too much love towards anything, because hate causes you to think negatively or don't look at the facts, and too much love creates an attachment. This is why Baha'u'lláh says that when you are a truth seeker, you have to be objective. You should not concern yourself with what you like to hear or what you want to find out. Rather, let the truth reveals itself by itself. I think another very, very important thing that Baha'u'lláh talks about is he should be content with little and be freed from all inordinate desire. He should treasure the companionship of those that have renounced the world and regard avoidance of boastful and worldly people a precious benefit. This is very important for a true seeker. Why? You should be content. Contentment is extremely important. Why with the little? He says because when you desire so much, you may not be really after the truth. When you look at it closely in a field of psychology, they say when you are content with the little, then you have open heart, open vision, and accept the truth, not because of your own benefit, rather you put yourself last and you just concern yourself with the benefit of the world, and then use that principle as a way to judge whether you are actually investigating the truth or falsehood. When he says he should treasure the companionship of those who have renounced the world. By world here, you have to see the definition that Baha'u'lláh himself offers. By world doesn't mean material things. Doesn't mean you should not have material things. Doesn't mean that you should not seek material things. Because in one sense, everything has a physical garment, so it is material. Baha'u'lláh, when he talks about the world, he is talking about our attachment to things, not the things in themselves. the car is not material thing if it is used for the proper cause. When you are so attached to your car that it defines you and you boast with it, and you think that if somebody else doesn't have that same car, either you judge him or her, or you think you are better. That is called world. This is why Baha'u'llah's famous doctrine is be in the world, but not be of the world. And in fact, this passage comes in a tablet, which is called Lawh Dunya. That means be in the world, like anybody else. Have a house, have a car, have a knowledge, have a degree. These are all good. This is not woe, but your attachment to them. When you use your house in order to just nourish your own desire, while when the house becomes the center of happiness, family, gatherings that are beneficial, Baha'u'llah said, blessed is the house. Therefore, when he says the truth seeker has to renounce the world, means those things that actually do not have any truth to it. Remember, this is the quality of a truth seeker, seeker after the truth. And then the last one that I want to pay attention to is regard avoidance of boastful and worldly people a precious benefit. Who are really worldly people? The people who backbite, the people who fault fight, the people who feel they are better, the people who only use others to enrich themselves. Humans do not have any value for them. The people who, for their ideology, they try to kill people. For their ideology, they try to do anything that is harmful. This is, Baha'u'llah says, if you are not with these people, you are better equipped to find the truth. Now, I want to open the mics to see if any of you have any question or a short comment about truth, quality of a truth seeker, assuming, I assume, you have read those paragraphs that we read last time, and also you did 213 through 215. If you are a non-Baha'i, you are welcome to the meeting, and for sure, whether you are a Baha'i, non-Baha'i, whether you believe in God, do not believe in God, you are after truth, or you are after search for meaning. So I open it for 10-15 minutes for questions if you have, or a comment before I go to the theme of tonight. Arshad?
Friends, you can unmute yourself and present your comments. Anybody has any comments?
Yes, I believe this is Mehrdad Golshani. I believe truth is relative, right? Am I right, doctor? The way I see it and the way I look at the perspective than, let's say, you or somebody else?
Yes.
We see truth, reality different ways.
Yes, see, there is an objective truth and there is a subjective truth. Objective truth means what it is, independent of how you and I look at it. Subjective truth is how we, based on our background, training, environment, we have a perception about what we see, what we think, how we feel. Therefore, yes, indeed, you can conclude to a statement. One is that as many ways to understand the truth as there are human beings. Why? Because every human being is distinguished from another human being. They have qualities that are subjective. There are qualities that are environmental. How were you raised in your life? Your economical background, your educational background, your psychological background, your social background, all these contribute on how you really see the world and how do you actually see the events in the world. So in that sense, yes, everything is subjective. When you accept that fact, then Shoghi Effendi's statement comes to light in the dispensation of Bahá'u'lláh, that the religious truth, like any other truth, is relative, not absolute. Since we all are subjectively looking at the world, therefore no one person has the whole truth. This is why, through the art of consultation, compassion, detachment, we glean from each other more than we ourselves are. So, yes, religious truths are relative. Every truth is relative. And this is why we always have to be ready, as Bertrand Russell rightly points out. When you think what you have is the end, you have understood everything, what you believe is absolute, he says that is where you go wrong. But when you say, what I have learned so far today is good, but I am always open to a more deeper level of truth. So the both unity and diversity are covered. Good question. Next.
Next question or comment?
No, I got a question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Riazati, could you a little bit describe more about the attachment? Because attachment to me is kind of feeling. If the person in reality getting something and after that feeling gets the different, like not attachment, but he's using that as not attachment, but not care about the others, they have anything to use or not, but they're not attached to these things because they already, that feeling is changes to some other things. So they don't, that much attached, but they don't, what it reminds me, it says from the Shoghi Effendi says, somehow you live not making anyone jealous or anyone to like look at you different, so I don't know with my English, I can't describe that, but I'm pretty sure you can understand what I'm saying. So what I'm asking, could you a little bit describe that attachment? Because the feeling can be change, not attaching that, but not caring the others they have or not.
Yes, beautiful. Very good point, Paul. Do you know, psychologists, that is my field, so I look at it from that perspective. Attachment or detachment, its root causes comes from psychological or spiritual settings of human. It is not feelings, is not even thoughts. Rather, it is those schema, if you will, S-C-H-E-M-A, a schema or archetype, or how you look at things that creates attachment or detachment. It seems the first year of a child's life establishes very important schema of how to look at the world. In fact, we have found out the relationship of a child with the primary caregiver determines the degree of anxiety, attachment, or detachment in the mind of the child. Child, through that experience, creates a way to look at the world. If he or she as a child hasn't had a secure relationship with the primary caregiver, then the sense of insecurity becomes ingrained in the mind of that child. Therefore, it impacts his relationship with others, does not trust that much any relationship, always feels that people are there only for a period of time and then they leave that child. Why? Because that few crucial months, that primary caregiver didn't give the good schema or a pattern of thinking. And then later on, we will find out that that contributes to the depression because loneliness is experienced. The person has everything in the world, goes and becomes educated, gets a very high degree, becomes very successful business person, but still that schema, that pattern is there. And yes, you are right, doesn't have that much feeling for others because he or she feels that when he needed a very secure binding, there was no secure binding. Therefore, attachment, detachment comes to light. I highly encourage you to read theory, which is called object relation in psychology, and also the secure and insecure attachment in child's life and its impact on the people throughout their lifetime. So the conclusion for is it is not material, it is not emotional, it is not even mental, it is spiritual. This is why beloved Shoghi Effendi considers some of these things that we, as a psychologist, might call mental disorder, mental disease. They are mainly a spiritual disease. And do not get scared from it, because a spiritual disease means unless your spirit shines, your spirit feels you are independent, at the same time interdependent with others, no matter what you think, what you feel, you are handicapped. Please forgive me for a lengthy explanation.
Thank you very much.
The last question, if there is any.
Does anybody else have a question? If not, we can move forward.
Very good. We have some, I believe, non-Baha'is among us, no? Or they are hiding. Linda, where are you?
I saw Linda in there, yeah.
Okay, very good. Linda, you are free to ask question anytime. The rest of the group, only the appointed time. Now that you do not have question, which I am sure you will eventually have many questions, the theme of tonight, which I asked you to consider reading, was paragraphs 102 to 109 or 110, which has to do with concept of God. How does Bahá'u'lláh looks at God? Do we really believe in God? Why do we believe in God? Is belief in God innate, or it has to be acquired through the spirit of faith? What is the difference between a spirit of faith and other spirits? You say, I am mentally sane, I am physically healthy. Is there really in humanity a spirit called a spirit of faith? Do you know, believe in God, or do you know God? That was a question that many psychologists, such as Carl Jung, asked. When they asked him, do you believe in God? Jung said, what type of question is that? I know God. How do you know God? Can we know anything? Please pay attention. I'm posing questions that you should have posed it before you come to this class. Can you know anything? Defeatingly. If you pay attention to what Mehrdad asked, if the truth is unknowable and everybody just simply has subjective understanding of the truth, isn't that the same thing about God? Can we have a personal relationship with God? What does personal relationship really mean? I pray to my God, you pray to your God, but the God is the same. So the question that I am putting in front of you is that, what is this term, G-O-D? Does it mean good? Does it mean universal good? Does it mean the source of good? Why do people such as Nietzsche, he says, God is dead. Do you pray for him tonight? That maybe in the next world he regrets what he said? Or his statement is valid? Because Nietzsche, in his Gay Science and Thus Said Zoroaster, he says the God that you can define, the God that has quality like a man, is God, is dead. Why? He says because we have created that God. The people have started, such as Feuerbach in his very famous work, The Essence of Religion. He said, what does that mean, God made man in his image? This is in Genesis. He says, the way that I look at this religion and their followers, these people made God in their image. So if those are all true, how does Baha'u'lláh looks at them? If you have read paragraph 103 especially, and 104, Baha'u'lláh undoubtedly believes in an unknowable God. Now you have to ask Baha'u'lláh, what is the relevance of something which is unknown? And Baha'u'lláh, throughout so many tablets, he says, Habib, that is where you go wrong. In fact, that reality which is unknown gives meaning to everything that exists in the world and the universe. And God is the source of meaning. Please pay attention. This is very much is in agreement with how psychologists look at it. That God, rather than a person or an entity, it is actually the purpose of life and the purpose of making any movement. Can you understand it? Baha'u'lláh says absolutely not. Why? He says because whatever you say does not really befits his station. Ladies and gentlemen, I do not want to confuse you, nor I want to make this a philosophical meeting. But can we say Fu'ad exists, Farshad exists, and then the next sentence you say God exists? When you talk about the existence, when you talk about Farshad, Fu'ad, your son, your dog, existence has a different meaning than when you say God exists. We are only using this because we have no other choice. That reality is a source of existence and does not share the existence like you and I do. Do you understand my point? Because the moment that you say God exists, you immediately have to think about time and space. Because when you say Farshad exists, you can see Farshad is sitting there half sleepy, half half reflective. But see, through the attributes of Farshad, you know that Farshad exists. Do you agree? So the people, especially after the Renaissance, they said the word existence for God make that reality to become a materialistic. This is by some people, such as Spinoza, such as Mullah Sadra. They thought there is kind of existence of the universe, pantheism, وحدت وجود. Everything is a part of that existence, but none of them is God. Baha'u'lláh, in these few paragraphs, he says wrong, wrong, wrong. Why? Baha'u'lláh, Mehrdad loves Spinoza. Why are you saying bad thing to break his heart? But see, the term existence is also has to be defined. Existence for God should be different from existence of his creation. Make sense or not? Because you cannot use the rules of the world of creation to apply it to the Creator. The moment you do it, he becomes one of us. Make sense? The moment that you try to apply what you and I do to prove that we exist, if you apply it to God, then God becomes negated. This is why he is known as an unknowable essence. Make sense? Some people call him creator. There is no problem with it, but we have to be careful. When you say he is a creator, again, that term should not be used as you and I use in the realm of creation. Some people call him the cause. Be careful. Do not use him and call him the first cause the way that you and I understand cause and effect. And that was the argument of Bertrand Russell and John Stuart Mill, if you are interested in this concept. That when you say everything has a cause and therefore the universe has a cause, they said, okay, then what? And then John Stuart Mill said, the moment I asked this from my daddy said, let's change the subject, my son. And Bertrand Russell said, the problem is that you used a principle of cause and effect, but you came to something which doesn't have a cause, and therefore it questions the validity of your own principle. While Baha'u'lláh says, I am not going to go there. It's unknown. The only thing that we know about him, about that reality, is not him, is not her. Because the moment you do that, you again reduce him to ashes. So Baha'u'lláh, in order to emphasize God, he says the source of all things, visible and invisible. Please pay attention to this. Abdul Baha, in some answered question, one of the chief work of Abdul Baha, he says, the reason that you cannot use these proofs for existence of God is because all of these proofs emanates from human mind. And human mind cannot fathom, understand something which is beyond it. This is why Abdul Baha says, in order for us to prove something, either we have to be resembling that thing, or we have to have our mind above it. We say, let have my mind around it, as we say in English. And Abdul Baha says, neither of these is possible about God. Therefore, how should we believe in God? Bahá'u'lláh, for that matter, starts in this paragraph the concept of manifestation. He says, we do not know God. We do not understand God, but we can see its evidence in every created being. And in order to know God, you have to go and concentrate on the manifestations of God. For him, the word manifestation has a capital M and a small m. Every created being is a manifestation of that unknown source. Everything. This is why Rumi, when they ask him, where is God, Master? And Rumi answers, show me where there is no God. Or when Muhammad in Quran says, wherever you turn your face, you see the face of God. You understand what am I saying? That is to say, everything that is created according to Bahá'u'lláh has one sign of that reality which is embodiment of everything. He says mineral kingdom, vegetable kingdom, animal kingdom. He says they all have a sign. But he says between all these kingdoms, you have a human, which is the highest creation. He says between these humans that have attributes of God, and this is why, by the way, he says don't backbite. Why? Because everybody has an attribute of God in it. And then Baha'u'lláh says, between all these men, there is one man that is the embodiment of all the attributes of God. And he calls that the supreme manifestation. Makes sense or not? And then this is all theology, ladies and gentlemen. Baha'u'lláh says, if you go through this process, that it says even you and any created thing has a token of God's attributes, and then you make it to believe the manifestation of God, then that manifestation declares that yes, there is God, and I cannot prove it. That is to say, the reason that we believe in God is not because of proof, is not because somebody has shown him to us, is because through search in our own existence, our own being, our own self, we have understood a much universal self that we call manifestation of God, or Bahá'u'lláh, or primal will. Bahá'u'lláh then concludes, if you know yourself, you know God. The people have misunderstood. As a psychotherapist, I have seen it among my fellow psychotherapists, and between some of these religious colleagues, that if you know yourself, I, me, I know God. Baha'u'lláh, in many tablets, in particular Lawh Hadi, you can see it in the Ocean of Lights, it says by that passage that whosoever knows himself knows God. He says, man arafa nafsin, that self, he says, is that manifestation of God. Anybody who understands that universal self then can know his own self also. This is very, very important, my dear friends. In fact, Baha'u'lláh suggests you never can know yourself unless you recognize that universal self, or Baha'u'lláh, or primal will. This is significant because it shows how he is unknowable, but at the same time, he is a personal God. What do you mean personal? This is a statement of unknowable but personal comes from Shoghi Effendi in God Passes By. That means anybody in the world that has been created can be connected to that source. Anybody, religious or non-religious, Baha'i or non-Baha'i, you can get connected. If through those qualities of a true seeker, you come to recognize that there is a universal manifestation in the world. For better understanding, I suggest reading a book called Ideas and Opinions by Albert Einstein. Einstein actually believed in God, but he says, I don't believe in a God the way that religious people have made him to look. Another book that I highly recommend to read is a book by Karen Armstrong called History of God. You read these books, you will see how close science and philosophy and mysticism is close to what Baha'u'lláh in these few paragraphs offers. Baha'u'lláh does not want any proof for the existence of God. And in fact, what Jung said is exactly what you feel. when I have that personal relationship with the universe, with the cosmos, then I know that there is a God, even if I cannot prove it to you. Because if I prove it to you, I become subjective. And because your way of seeing things is different from mine, we may never prove anything to anybody. I want to stop right here and see if there are questions before I continue.
Are there any questions?
Minutes we have, Mr. What is our time?
It's 5 minutes to 9. Are there any questions at this point or comments?
Yes, I have 1.5 questions.
Okay, go ahead.
One is, I'd like to expand on, oh, may I go ahead? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Sure, go ahead, go ahead, yes.
I want to expand on Fuad's previous question on detachment. I want to know if detachment, you mentioned it is spiritual, right? If it is spiritual, then it's a state of mind, right?
Yeah, see what I said? I think we went to the previous question. See, spiritual doesn't mean it is not mental, rather it is beyond mental. Please pay attention. In reality, according to Bahá'u'lláh himself, in Lohe Reis Arabi, the tablet of Reis, you can find it in Summons of the Lord of Hosts, he says we make this distinction between soul, spirit, mind, and body, but in reality, they are only dimensional definition. What I said was attachment and detachment, it is more than mental operation. And we have found this when we study the quality of the child and the relationship that it has to the world based on the first year of the experience. So is it really mental? No, because we see children, you give them the world of the toys, still they complain. And you see a child that has one toy of 1,000 toys that his brother had, but still that child is content. That child is detached. So what I said was qualities such as truthfulness, such as righteousness, these are not mental qualities. These are spiritual qualities. Because if it becomes mental, then you have to decide when you should be truthful, when you should not be. And that is where the problem starts. You may
state of mind, doctor, right? It is state of mind, right?
Yeah.
Or attachment is a state of mind, but
Yes.
Are they abstract or they are tangible? How
They are
can
tangible. As I said, when the child wants more toys, it is not because he likes more toys. Because of the insecurity that he has had, wants to replace that insecurity with the material things. So I suggest we table that one for later on about attachment and detachment. But in short, I can say, of course, everything which is a spiritual has a mental manifestation, has an emotional manifestation, and has a physical manifestation.
my really question, the other question was relative to God that we discussed it earlier. I accidentally was flipping through the pessimism of Schopenhauer today, and the way he sees God being imperfect. And you just mentioned that God's essence are in humanity. And if I know myself, then I know God. So what I know myself, what I know of Mehrdad is such an imperfect being.
Yes.
So God imperfect as well, because the whole universe is
See what we mentioned, Mehrdad John. We do not share the essence of God. We share attributes that we give to God. This is two different things. Please pay attention. Schopenhauer was right. Because if you want to know God through human imperfection, then you come up with a God which is imperfect. The value of this statement is only one thing. Why do you believe in God? Why do you believe in life after death? Why do you believe in free will? Maybe Kant was right. You believe because it provides some kind of cohesiveness between our activities individually and collectively. So as you can see, the more we have truthfulness, you are more godly. The more we are righteous, we say you are godly. As you can see, we use this terminology God in relation to the attributes that we need to manifest. Not that God has those attributes. Because for God, there is no such a thing as truth and a lie. You see that? These divisions are made in the domain of time and space. These divisions are validated when we are in a society in relation with others. For instance, when you say God is just, what do you really mean? You, in order to see the justice, you look at your attributes, you look at the relationship that you have with another human being, and then if something doesn't go right, you say God is not just. So we use this terminology in order to understand human relationship, not God himself. Let's see, next question.
Any other questions? If not, let's move forward, please.
Really, no question?
I don't see anything.
Sharam, you had a lot of questions before the class. Anyway, so what we are saying, ladies and gentlemen, Bahá'í Faith does not try to prove God. Bahá'í Faith cannot see a way to deny God. But Bahá'í Faith strongly emphasizes that the only way to know God is through recognition of that universal reality first, and then through personal transformation. Please pay attention to these two statements that I made. First is recognition of that prime source, then using that prime source to play a role in your own personal life. This is where Bahá'u'lláh in Aqdas talks about the first duty that God has ordained for mankind is the recognition of the manifestation of God, and then is obedience to whatsoever he has revealed. Please pay attention to this. It makes the God more relevant. It doesn't make it only a verbiage that you say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Let me give you an example in a personal way. Whenever you meet each other, if you are a Muslim, if you are a Baha'i, if you are a Babi, you say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. What does that mean? What does it mean by saying God is great? Allahu Akbar. God is most glorious. When you read the writings of the Bab and Bahá'u'lláh, it means two things. It means when you say God is great, doesn't mean he's tall. Doesn't mean that greatness that you have fathomed in your mind. By great means whatever you think about anything, God is greater than that thing. Whether it is an idea, whether it is a feeling, God is beyond it. When you say God is most glorious, that means whatever you consider glory, there is a source which is more glory. So, why the Baha'is, for instance, say to each other, Allahu Akbar? In the Babism, it was a little bit complicated. You had to say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Ajmal, Allahu Akbar. And even Baha'is and Babis and Muslims, they say Allahu Akbar. Babis, Bab said in Persian, Bayan, every Babi, every day of the 19 days has to say one of these. One day has to say Allahu Akbar, another day Allahu Akbar, another day Allahu Akbar. God is beautiful, God is great, God is this. Baha'is even are commanded to say 95 times Allahu Akbar every day. Have you ever asked yourself, what is the meaning of that? What is the relevance of that? Why, when I meet Fuad, Farshad, or any of you, if you are a Baha'i, I have to say Allahu Akbar. What does that mean? How about I tell to Farshad Allahu Akbar, and then Farshad Jun, I want to talk about Mr. Golshani and what bad things he did to me today. Bob said, get it, you a stupid Habib. Allahu Akbar meant that you say Allahu Akbar, Mirdad says Allahu Akbar, that means during our time together, we only say, feel, think, do that which manifests the glory, unity, peace. Do you see that? So the concept of God even is used in the Baha'u'llah's writings to have some relevance on a day-to-day operation. not only believe in some fancy things, and if somebody doesn't believe in it, you want to judge him or kill him or deprive him. I don't know whether that's point come across clearly, that we use God in a day-to-day, moment-to-moment, through manifesting his attributes, which are infinite. And I never said, nor you should believe, that we share essence of God. Essence is something which we even do not understand. We only deal with attributes. And that is the key point. How many more minutes do we have, Mr. Parshwa?
We have 25 more minutes.
Very good. Any question before I can go to the next concept? Sharam?
What is coming on?
Yeah, but Mr. Nasirpur raised his hand up like a couple of times. Nasirpur, go ahead.
Rocco, go ahead.
Your mic is off. Okay.
I cannot hear him.
We don't have audio.
No problem. But he raised up several times. So can I ask my question?
Go ahead. Well, go ahead.
Okay. So what I grasp or what I understand, I cannot recognize any source, any source of anything, not the source of God, but any material. What I see about the material is just the appearance of the material, the color, all those things. So even the material, even this worldly, what we call, we don't have the power to recognize that either. So, but the only thing I have, just the feeling, I can say the feeling of there is God. So that kind of I was reading the some answer question, which it says in the bottom, who has the feeling, so that doesn't need to be like a provement or anything like that for the God. So is that right, or can you
see with this concept of feelings, John, you have to be very careful. Why? Because as you rightly mentioned,
can you explain the question more, please? I had hard time understanding the question.
John, in one sentence, say it. I cannot hear you.
You're muted.
Yes. I see even as a human, I cannot understand any source of anything. That's the same as not just God, but everything I cannot achieve or understand any source. So
Yeah.
that kind of this is the something, but to existing, not using the existing word by that, but human definition, but for there is God is a feeling the human can feel. We can feel there is God. So I can feel there is God, but I cannot prove that. And then I want to make sure this is what I'm understanding is right, or that's what you are understanding that, or I'm wrong.
Okay, see, Bahá'u'lláh has a tablet that is called Loh Salman. Partially has been translated by beloved Shoghi Effendi. You can see it in the gleanings from the writings of Bahá'u'lláh. Bahá'u'lláh says that which science has proven, and that is you never really can understand anything about anything in a finest form of existence. That is to say, even zarre. Take the most unnoticeable element, particle, and then Baha'u'lláh says, befittingly, you never can understand it.
Right.
Therefore, if we cannot understand that, whatever understanding we have for is our perception. And because our perception is limited, therefore, if we rely on our perception fully, then we deny everything which is not perceived. And this is exactly what Abdul Baha says in Some Answered Question. That he says, if it is a feeling, then Mr. Cow is a supreme philosopher. So he wants to say it is beyond feeling, beyond thought, but nonetheless, feeling is important. Nonetheless, thought is important. Because in one sense, nothing really can be fully unraveled, but at the same time, the search for unraveling things gives you meaning. Make sense? Okay. Any other question?
Hey, Sharon, do you have a question?
Okay. Sharon.
I was confused a bit before. Now I'm completely confused.
That's good.
So, you said, I mean, we see that in Bible or wherever, God made us to his image. So finally, what does it mean?
Beautiful. See, you are resting, and this is why you now got confused. See, we need to understand these passages differently. Not that these passages are wrong. When next week we talk about symbols, you see how one of the problem of humanity is the interpretation of the symbols, not the symbols themselves. God created man in his image doesn't mean that God has an image. Because you believe that God has an image, then he fails to be God, because God is without an image. Makes sense? Mm-hmm. But when he says God made man in his image, is exactly what Baha'u'lláh says in 102, 103, 104. That whatever attributes you want to see in God, he created in the world of creation. So when you, Mr. Sharon, become honest, truthful, kind, and all of those high qualities, you become the exponent of attributes of God, and this is what in the Bible we call image of God. But that doesn't mean you have become God. Because God is something to become.
Not an easy task.
You see, and this is good. This is why it is becoming, not being. This is why you never say, I made it. You always try. This is why you are compassionate to each other. Because everybody grows at different rate. Everybody falls. But we are here to help each other. We are not here to judge each other. Do you see that, Shahram? I think that what Baha'u'lláh wants to do, rather than I am made in the image of God, but I'm a Jew and you are a Christian. If I'm really an image of God, everybody that I meet, regardless of the background, is the image of God. You see that? Application is important. Any other point? Did you come out of confusion or not?
Well, more or less.
Very good.
I'm coming out.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Do you know, I think these topics need to be reflected on. The reason that I want these questions to come out, because our youths do not accept these traditional proofs anymore. Do you know, you and I, all of us who are here, are working with the youths. Youths do not, you cannot just tell them, accept it. They say, why? You cannot tell them, believe it. They ask you why. You cannot say, I go and pray for you. And then they say, do it more. But at the end of the day, what they are saying to you and I, that how you define what you want me to believe, your definition and the way that you are defining it is faulty. There may be a God, but the way that you have conceptualized is wrong. You see that? This is why the people such as Nietzsche, if you be a scholar of Nietzsche's writing, go and meet them. They are arguing whether Nietzsche really believed in God or not. Because in Thus Said Zoroaster, he says, God, where are you? Come back. Before that, he says, when they ask him, where are you going, Nietzsche? He says, I'm going to cemetery to bury the God. What God? The God of idle fancy and vain imagining. The God of 2,000 years ago. The God that is described in the Old, New Testament and Quran. Those definitions were good, but they are not adequate anymore. If you have to take something out of this session, you need to have an adequacy of definition for these terminologies. Humankind has evolved. With the evolution, spiritually and mentally, you need to also evolve these concepts. The term stayed the same. 2,000 years ago, they called it God. Now they call it God. 500,000 years from now, they call it God. But our God are different. When you want to use the same meaning and the same definition for God as our forefathers had, then Nietzsche says God is dead. Then the scientist says, show me the proof. But if Baha'u'lláh says, change your orientation. Change the way you think. And then these concepts evolve. Harmony of religion and science in the Bahá'í Faith proves that science doesn't deny that there is a force. But science rightly has to deny how religion defines that source. Because religions that are not current, those religions are good for that stage of evolution. Make sense? See, look at Quran. It starts, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God that is gracious, kind, and so forth, merciful. Bob starts his book in the name of God that is sanctified above all these attributes. Bahá'u'lláh starts his book by saying, Bismillah al-Amna al-Aqdas. He says, whatever you think, it is greater. Whatever you think is sanctified from it. That needs maturity. And this is where the Bahá'í Faith comes in. This is why I believe, as a concluding remark, do not try to argue. Do not try to bring arguments for God. Rather, try to manifest his attributes. Try to be kind to animals, as Baha'u'lláh says in Íqán. Try to be kind to nature. Try to be kind to your fellow human being. Let's have a universal consciousness about God. Let's, wherever you go, be the house of God. Let, wherever you can, manifest the attributes of God to become the house of God. Change your terminology of holy. Then you see, the closer you are to holiness, mean wholeness, you have a better picture, more adequate picture of God. As a psychotherapist, I can tell you, unless you feel it in your heart, God doesn't exist. This is why Muhammad, Baha'u'lláh, emphasized God only sits in the hearts of man. Think about it. He even didn't say mind of man. Muhammad, quoted by Baha'u'lláh, by Abdul Baha, he says, the heavens, skies cannot contain me. Earth cannot sustain me. Only the heart of a true believer is the place that is the seat of my revelation. This is why Baha'u'lláh has come to change hearts. What is heart? Heart is where transformation takes place. Heart is where the mind finds refuge. Because mentally, you can analyze, but you can become paralyzed with your own analysis. When he says God has to sit in the heart, in my opinion, that means, Habib, transformation is the chief issue. Transform. Whatever limitation, Habib, you have, God means, help me to go beyond it. And in fact, God means beyond the form, beyond the limitation, beyond time, beyond space. I hope that clarified a little bit, Sharon. Okay, next.
Mr. Fuad, did you have a question?
I want to give the other people have a time, so I don't want to just myself, but I have a lot of questions. Yeah.
I'm sure everybody has all questions. Listening to this presentation, more and more questions comes to mind.
Yes.
Is there anybody else who would like to make a comment or ask a question?
Okay, Fahad, go ahead. One more chance for you.
Okay. So I said to myself, when everything in this world I can see is unknowable essence, which is I cannot know about the essence, and I define God as an unknowable essence, I see kind of relation between these two, but the God as a creation, as a definition for the creation we have, has an order for us. So, and then, so that's I see kind of the relation between these two essence so I cannot talk about it because I don't know anything. If I say anything, I describe it wrong because it's unknowable. But
Exactly.
to me, it's the same relation. It's the same thing. But
Exactly.
and then another thing, it comes to my mind. We are talking about like two gods in here, which is one with our definition, which is the small g God, which is the manifestation of everything, and big G God, which is the unknowable essence, which is the same as the other things in this world. So we cannot recognize that. That's what I hear from Bahá'u'lláh says, there is no God beside me. So that's like a small g.
See, because we are close to the end of it, right, Farshad? How many minutes?
Yeah, 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes.
Mm.
See, if I have to say it exactly how I feel for it, I appreciate Baha'u'lláh personally and God when I see his attributes in you, in another human being. I don't believe the concept of God can be felt unless your heart and your mind is connected to another human being and connected to another creation, whether it's mineral or otherwise. The sense of appreciation for the existence I call God. The sense of feeling bounty at all time I call God. These are what I believe the value of belief in God is. And when you read the book History of God, you will see everybody has conceptualized God differently. Philosopher one way, mystic another ways, psychologist another way. But what I believe Baha'u'lláh does is that I do not want to reduce it into human attributes, but I also want to say it is not fully irrelevant. You see, Fahad, where am I going? That is unknowable, unapproachable. Whatever you say is, at the best, is the result of your imagination. As Abdul Baha says in some answer question, at the best is a creature like you, but in a finer attributes. So Abdul Baha says, just leave it alone. But remember, you cannot leave home without it. Because if you consider it order, see, you said it beautifully. You consider it a natural order, some people call that God. If you consider it the source of life, but they do not know what the source is. You see that? This is why Bahá'u'lláh that I have come to recognize doesn't want us to really try to understand this thing literally, because then we divide. But in one thing we can agree, and that is a statement of Jesus when he said God is love. When Abdul Baha comes and says, whatever is universal, that is closer to be godly. Har amr umumi elahis. You see how does he do it? Or whenever even he wants to talk about religion of this God, he doesn't say Islam or Bahá'í Faith. He says, my religion is a unity of humankind, universal peace. I love how Bahá'u'lláh and Abdul Baha want to make these touchable rather than a school of thought. Do you see where am I going? That philosopher sits on one corner and theologists sit and they argue. They say, no, you cannot find it because it's neither philosophy, not theology, not science. These are all its handiworks. And through the handiworks, you only know there is a source, but you cannot use the handiworks to actually define that source. Thank you.
Okay, one comment. I understood better now. He was muted. I couldn't say. I couldn't say so. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Can I give a comment?
Yes.
In the opening of the epistle to the son of the wolf, I think that is where it is that Baha'u'lláh says, let me find it here. Praise be God, the eternal that perisheth not, the everlasting that declineth not, the self-subsisting that altereth not. He it is who is transcendent in his sovereignty.
Yes.
And he is manifest through his signs and hidden through his mysteries.
Excellent. This is exactly what we talked about.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Is actually, you cannot deny him because everywhere there is a sign.
Yes.
But you cannot use any of those signs to completely define him. Therefore, he is a mystery. This is why in Íqán it has been quoted. God says, I am your mystery, you are my mystery. Make sense? Thank
yes,
you.
makes sense. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Of course. Shahram, last word. Yes.
I only wanted to thank and say I understood. That's it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You are very kind. Next session, I want to go into the same concept, but the need for manifestations. Why do we need manifestation of God? Many people say, why I cannot directly communicate with God? Why do I need somebody in the middle? That is a very good question, isn't it?
I think.
Read Íqán, paragraph 103 through 116, and when you are reading it, watch for that question and possible response that Baha'u'llah gives. See, I'm trying to raise question and direct you into the tablet. The question is simply this: why do people need another middleman? Is Baha'u'llah really a middleman? Or Baha'u'llah is the full expression of God himself? The same thing applies to Jesus. But if you are people in this group or non-Baha'is, that question has to be answered. Is Baha'u'llah fully mouthpiece of God, or he is just a man like you and I? And if he is, why do we need him? And within that context, reflect on why Jesus, Muhammad, Bob, and Baha'u'llah especially, they say our true station is nothing but Godhead. You may call me manifestation of God, but I'm actually the finest, fullest attributes of God in me. This is why they say there is no God but me. And how do you relate it to Jesus' statement, I am the Son of God? Nobody knows me, knows God but through his Son. We have to bring this into some kind of understanding, and you see that Íqán will cover that for you. And thank you very much for your attention and participation.